Those of you who have seen some of my other videos know that I generally consider myself to be fairly polite when I debate people. I try to argue fair, and I try to be very respectful to Christians or anyone else that happens to believe in a deity when I argue about the existence of a god or gods. However, I found that creationists need to be dealt with a little more forcefully, especially ones that are old enough to actually examine the mountain of research gathered over the past 150 years and draw a conclusion based on that evidence. In other words, if you're over 12 years old and you want to argue a creationist viewpoint with me, you better wear some protective gear, because I'm not holding back. What I want to do today is give those that wish to do intellectual battle with creationists some extra armor and a few extra weapons in your mental arsenal to press home the advantage that we have in evidence. The first tip I want to give you is to make sure that you know the facts, at least to a fair degree, and that you know where to find the rest of the facts on short notice if there are any details you aren't sure about. If you don't know the facts about science, a creationist might build one of their world-famous straw man arguments, where they assert something, for instance, well, scientists think that bumblebees evolved from flying alligators in 20,000 years. What do you say to that? Isn't that ridiculous? If you don't know the facts, you won't be able to challenge them on that kind of nonsense. Here's an example of this. A few weeks ago, I was arguing with an old Earth creationist friend of mine on Facebook. You know what he told me? He said, "How could humans have evolved from dinosaurs in just a few 100 million years?" If I hadn't had much scientific knowledge about evolution, I might have gone around and around with him and wasted time with probabilities and mutations and not even noticed that he had absolutely no idea that not only are dinosaurs not our ancestors, but that our mammalian ancestors were already alive when dinosaurs walked the earth. Worse yet, if I hadn't known this, I would have robbed myself of a really good laugh. The second tip I want to give you is to remain focused when arguing with creationists. Often when you start getting into the specifics of a certain point or about a certain body of evidence, the creationists will try to expand the topic to several other new lines of attack at once. Sometimes I will say something like, well, what do you think of the fact that DNA, homology, and fossil evidence agree with each other? This is pretty close to what can actually happen in a response. Yes, but what are the chances of us actually being the way we are now? Created nor destroyed. How is it? Well, what about our morals? Yes, where do we get those from? Does that mean aren't the chances of evolving really small? Stop! Don't let them get away with this. If you let them move on to a different topic or 10 different topics at once, when you have them stumped, you're never going to make any progress or show them that their arguments are without merit. They'll just jump to another topic that they feel more comfortable with, whether that's the Big Bang, Bible verses, or recipes for bundt cake, or whatever. The third tip I want to give you can be applied to arguing in general, but needs to especially be applied in debates with creationists. Do not argue about how to argue. If they use a straw man or an ad hominem argument, sure, you can call the argument out as being inaccurate for those reasons, but do not get into a protracted discussion of the definition of a straw man. Just tell them that their assertion of what they believe to be the current scientific understanding is false. Similarly, if they say, just look at all of the complex life, how could it all have come from a single original cell? Then just inform them that incredulity or ignorance is not an argument for or against anything. That's like me saying that our muscles don't use chemical energy because I'm too ignorant to understand the Krebs cycle. That's not an acceptable argument in any realm, and you shouldn't let that be in your arguments either. Correct their lack of understanding with facts and back them up. As someone that is not a science denier, you know that the facts are on your side. They want to distract you from the facts because their understanding of science is poor. Maybe your arguments will sometimes even be compelling enough to make a creationist seriously consider them. We can always hope. So to review, if you're interested in arguing with a creationist, 1. Know your science, because you have to be educated on the subject to catch their unintentional humor. 2. Don't let them wander off topic, no matter how much you may like bundt cake. And 3. Don't let them turn a scientific argument into an argument about arguing. Well, that's all for part 1. Thank you for watching, and subscribe if you want to hear part 2 of How to Argue with a Creationist.